Okay, welcome to Afternoon Art Club. This is our first session for December. Today's December 1st, and this Afternoon Art Club meeting is for 4th through 6th graders. So you guys have just completed up the month of November sessions. This artwork right here. You guys made a radial symmetry folded paper design. I hope that yours went well and that you've had an opportunity to complete it. If you have not had a chance to complete it, please go ahead and finish it, then take a photo of it and send that photo to me for our online digital exhibition that will begin the beginning of the month of January and run the entire month of January on our website. So everybody will be able to see the artwork that you've created. Now, I'll give you some more information at our next session on how and when to drop off your artworks if you need us to photograph them here at the museum. So I will be giving you that information next session. So make sure to tune into that or watch the video on YouTube. But you should be all finished with this. And today we're going to be beginning something completely new. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about color. We're going to be learning about color theory and how colors work together to create vibrant works of art. So we're going to spend part of our time today doing a little worksheet that uses color theory. So I'm going to talk you through that today. Then we're going to do a drawing that will be the starting point for the artwork that we're going to be completing next week. Now, it's really important that we talk a little bit about color and color theory before we do our project next week, because I want you to have a good understanding about the relationships between colors and how colors work together. Now, I am going to drop something right into our chat box here. So I have a color theory PDF that I dropped into the chat box. You can save that to your computer if you would like. I'm going to talk to you today about how you can either print this one off and use it, or if you would prefer to make your own based on the template that I sent you, I'll show you how to do that as well. So we're going to start out by just talking a little bit about color theory, and then we are going to be doing a drawing. We're going to be doing an abstract drawing using circles and lines. This is just an example of what mine looks like, and you'll get a better picture of it when I switch to the view of my desktop. So feel free to go ahead and drag that color theory form in the chat box to your desktop if you would like. And if you can't see it there, then I'll send it in the email when I send out the email for the video recording tomorrow. So you'll get that in your email box as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys. And hopefully you'll be able to see my desktop. Just a second here. Go ahead and pull this in. Okay, good deal. Now I'm going to get this centered up for you. This is an example of the drawing we're going to be doing together. I'm going to zoom in on my desktop a little bit so you can see everything I'm doing just a little bit better. So zoom in a touch there. Very good. I'm going to go ahead and lock my focus so that's not causing any trouble. One moment, see if I can get that green dot to go away. Oopsie. Let me try this again. Go ahead and zoom back in. Sorry about that. And lock my focus one more time. Sorry, there's always some kind of technical something that comes up. Now I'm going to go ahead and open my chat box again. Remember that if you have any questions at all, that you can just throw those questions into the chat box. So please remember that you can throw those into the chat box. Now, let me grab my paper that we're going to be working with today. There it is. I set it over to the side. One moment. Okay. So if you see that sheet or that file that I dropped into the chat box, this is just a printout of that same exact sheet. And we're going to be talking a little bit today about color theory. We're going to be learning about the color wheel. Now, again, this may be something that you've done before in an art class, maybe. But if you have not done it before, it's really important that we go through it together. And it's actually kind of fun going through this worksheet and learning how to use the color wheel as a tool. So here we go. Let me tell you what you're going to need to get started with this activity. So you can either print out this sheet, or if you just have a white sheet of paper, this is just one of the white sheets of paper that comes in our kit that we created. You can actually just draw these things right on your white paper and participate right alongside me. So you could just draw a circle with 6 pie shapes, with 6 pie slices right here. And you could just kind of write the things out that I have on my screen right on your paper. It does not have to look like this. You don't have to use a ruler to measure out boxes. You can just sort of jot this down if you can't get access to this paper. So just kind of hang with me and watch first. And then this is something that you can kind of work on throughout the week. Now, the materials that you're going to need to do this activity, or the beginning of this activity, the part where we do this painting on our color theory worksheet, are watercolor paint. So you can use your watercolor strip that was in your kit if you picked up a kit from us. If not, you might have a watercolor set, something like this at home that you could use. If you don't have paint available to you, you can also use crayons or colored pencils. These are some other colored pencils that I have sitting around. So anything that you have that will create color can work for this. But I like to use paint for this activity because I think that it gives us a really bright, vibrant result. And I like to see how I can mix colors together. And paint is one of the best ways to do that. So you also are going to need a paintbrush. Now you can use a paintbrush like this, or if you got a kit from us, you have a little paint swab just like this one in your kit, which you can definitely use that as well. And you're going to need a little cup of water if you're using watercolor paint. And you're also going to need something like a paper towel. This is an old washcloth that I use for painting. It's got paint and stuff on it, so it's not anything nice. It's just something that I use for this type of project. So I have all these things ready. I'm going to just move that towel up there, have my water ready. And here is my watercolor strip. I'm going to start with this, and I might change materials as I move through so that you can see how you can use any materials that you have available to you at home. So I might switch things around a little bit. I'm going to start out just by using what was in our kit, just the little paint swab and our watercolor paint strip. And then maybe I'll switch to my paintbrush and watercolor set in a few minutes, and then maybe to colored pencils at the end. All right, so here we go. Now, the first important thing to remember when we're talking about color or color theory is something you've probably seen before, and this is called a color wheel. Now, a color wheel is a tool. It's a tool that shows us the relationship between colors. So a color wheel can tell us how some colors are related to other colors. And I'm going to show you an example of that as we work through the color wheel together. I'm going to show you how to use it as a tool because it's really useful to have a good color wheel. Now I'm going to just get a little water on my brush, and I'm going to start with red. So I'm just going to add a little bit of red, or a little water, to my red paint here at the top in my paint swab. Now remember, if you're using the watercolor strip, it's really useful to just put a little bit of water on it and let it sit for a minute so that it can kind of soften up the paint and make it ready to use. And I want to find the pie slice on my color wheel that says red. So that's just right here. And I'm just going to paint it in. Just going to paint it in red. Now the paper I printed this on is just copy paper. It's not fancy art paper. So the paint wants to kind of bleed right through it, but that's totally fine. This will work just fine for what I'm doing. You'll notice I'm not trying to be super, super neat about it. This is not a final work of art. This is a tool that we're going to be using when we make our artwork. So yes. Hold on one second, guys. I have a question. Okay. All right. So back to this. So we have, I threw that at myself. Okay. So we have red in our color wheel right here. Now let's take a look. I'm going to rinse off my brush. And I'm going to start by adding the primary colors to the color wheel. Now, primary colors, ladies and gentlemen, are colors that cannot be made by mixing any paint colors together. So red is one of our primary colors. And that means that we cannot take any two colors. We can't take orange and blue and mix them together and get red. There's no colors, no paint colors we can mix together to get the color red. So we have to kind of start with red paint. It is a primary color. So you'll notice down here in this section, I have another little circle with 3 pie slices, and I'm just going to add red to that because I know that red is one of my primary colors. Since I'm already painting with red, I'm just going to add some red to my primary color pie slice right there. All right. Again, I'm not trying to be super neat. If you go outside the lines, that's just fine. This just helps us understand the relationships between these colors. So we have our red pie slice and we have our red in our primary colors. Our next primary color that we're going to talk about is yellow. So red and yellow are both primary colors. There's no 2 colors or 3 colors that we can mix together that will give us yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a little water right there just to soften up that yellow paint. I'm going to find the pie slice that's labeled yellow. And we're going to talk about why these are, I labeled them for you, and I'm going to tell you why I put them where I put them. A color wheel is important. It's important in a color wheel, to make sure that the colors are on the color wheel in the right order. So for the color wheel to work right as a tool, the colors have to be in the right order. And I told you it was a primary color, so I'm going to go ahead and put that down here in our primary colors. I've got some yellow there now and red, both on my color wheel and in my primary color section. Now, our last primary color, you may know it. I hope you're saying it to yourself at home, is, so we already did red, we already did yellow, and our last primary color is blue. So these 3 colors, red, yellow, and blue, cannot be made by mixing any colors together. There are no 2 colors we can mix together to create red, yellow, or blue. So we'll start with these paint colors. There we go. Okay. And I'm also going to add that to my primary colors right here. To my chart with the primary colors. There we go. All right. Now let's take a look at our color wheel really quickly, guys. If we look at this color wheel, we have red, yellow, and blue. And you'll notice that they're evenly spaced around the color wheel. And in between each primary color, we have a blank spot. So we have yellow and then a blank spot, blue, then a blank spot, red, then a blank spot, and then back to yellow. It's really important if you're drawing your own color wheel to do it just like this. Make sure that your primary colors have a blank spot in between them, just like that. It's important because that's going to help us make sure that we understand the correct relationship between our colors, okay? So we've already identified the primary colors. Now I want to do a little practice paint mixing. And I'm going to switch over to my other watercolor set for the paint mixing, just because I want to keep switching it up and changing the way that I'm showing you. I still need my water cup. Still need my washcloth there. Okay, so if we take a look right here, what happens when I mix? Okay, let's see what happens when we mix some colors, just right here on my paper. Okay, right here on my paper, if I were to take red and yellow, I'm going to start with some yellow here. Get some yellow, put it right here on my paper. And if I get a little bit of red and add that to it, and I mix those together, let's see what I get. I get orange, okay? So this is kind of a reddish orange color right now. As it dries, it'll lighten up a little bit. But when we mix together red and yellow, we get orange. And you saw me do that right there on my paper. I mixed together yellow paint with a little bit of red paint to get orange paint. So you can see that just right there. Now, we can go ahead over to our color wheel and let's take a look at that on our color wheel. When we look at our color wheel and we find the color red and then we find the color yellow, the same thing we had right here, red and yellow. When we find these two colors, you can see that in between them, in between red and yellow, you'll find orange. That's because if you mix red and yellow, you get orange, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and paint my orange onto the color wheel. I'm just going to use the orange paint. I could go ahead and mix red and orange or red and yellow together to get my orange, but since I have orange paint, I'm just going to use that. Okay, I'm going to just paint that right on. Again, if you go out of the lines, it doesn't matter. This isn't a final work of art. This is just a tool that we're going to be using to understand the colors we're going to choose for our final work of art. Okay, so now we've got orange. Now let's take a look at this. If you look down here, we have another little circle right here. You see that circle? It says secondary colors. Secondary colors are colors that you make by mixing together two primary colors. So, for example, just like we did here, we mixed together red and yellow. Both of those are primary colors to make orange, which is a secondary color. So I'm just going to go ahead, since I've already started with my orange, and paint my orange right into that area. So I have now my first secondary color. Now remember, secondary colors are colors that you make by mixing together any two primary colors. Any two primary colors will give you a secondary color. So let's go back over here to blue and red. Let's see what happens when we mix blue and red together. So I'm going to start with a little bit of blue right there on my paper. Come back over to my red, mix them together. This is always a little tricky, this combination, because it looks so dark. I'm going to see if I can make it easier for you to see. So it's hard to see on the camera, but when we mix together blue and red, we get violet. See if I can't get that a little clearer for you here. It just looks so dark on the camera, but we get violet. When we mix together blue and red, we get violet. So I'll just use, let me see here. I think that this is the right color. Okay. So I'm going to get my violet mixed up here. And I'm going to just find my section right here labeled violet and go ahead and paint that in. My violet paint color looks a little bit better than my mixture that I created, mostly because those colors are so dark and it's hard to see them on the camera. All right, so there's my violet. And I know that violet is a secondary color because I mixed together two primary colors. I mixed together red and blue to get violet. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to my secondary colors. I know purple or violet is a secondary color because I mixed it by mixing together two primary colors, red and blue. And you'll also notice that the violet is right in between the two colors that we use to mix it. So here's violet, and we know that we mix red and blue together to get violet. So the color wheel can tell us exactly how to make these colors. If we have a color wheel, it can tell us exactly how to make the colors that we want to make. All right, and our last color mixing section right down here at the bottom, yellow and blue. So I'm going to add a little yellow, come back over here to my blue, get some of that, mix it in. Again, it's a little bit dark, but I'm going to get a little more yellow, so hopefully you can see that. Makes green. So blue and yellow will make green when we mix them together. So if we come back over here to our color wheel, now that we know when we mix blue and yellow, we get green. When we come back over to our color wheel and take a look at that, if we find yellow and blue, right in between these two colors is green. That's because when we mix together yellow and blue, we get green. So I'm going to go ahead and add the green to that section of my color wheel. And I will now, this will be finishing up my color wheel. I'll be finishing up my color wheel here. And there's a few more things we're going to practice before we move on to our final artwork. But we're very, very close to being done here. All right. So here we go. So we know yellow and blue are both primary colors. When we mix them together, we get green, which makes that a secondary color, because secondary colors are made when you mix together two primary colors. So we know that's how you get a secondary color, by mixing together any two primary colors. So let's take a quick look at our color wheel. So when we take a look at our color wheel, if we want to know how to mix violet, all we have to do is mix together red and blue. If we want to know how to make green, we just mix together yellow and blue. If we want to know how to make orange, you just look on either side of the color and I find yellow and red, and that will give me orange. So now we know how to mix all of the colors on the color wheel. And now let's talk a little bit about some color schemes or color families. Now, we can use our color wheel to help us find colors that are what we call complementary. Complementary colors are color opposites. So if we look on the color wheel, to find two colors that are opposite each other, we can find our first color we want to start with. So let's say I wanted to start with red, and I just go straight across to the other side of the color wheel to find its complement. This is the color that is the opposite of red. So the opposite of red is green. So if I come down here, I'm going to go ahead and add the complements down here as well. So I'm going to put my red right up here at the top part of the square. Wash off my brush. I'm going to add a little bit of green down here. Now, when we put two complementary colors together, or two color opposites next to each other, those colors are going to look more bright and vibrant than they ever look next to any other color. Putting complements together makes the colors look very, very bright and vibrant. So red next to green makes both of those colors really stand out. Now let's start it with another. We did red, the opposite of red is green. Let's choose another primary color. Let's choose blue. If we're looking for the opposite of blue, I'm going to find blue on my color wheel, and I'm going to go right over to the opposite color, which would be orange. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add blue to the color, or to my complementary colors. This one's the blue. So I'll add my blue. Again, it doesn't have to be super neat. You don't have to get your paint right in the spaces there. Just do the best you can. Okay, and the opposite of blue, again, if I go back up to my color wheel, the opposite of blue is orange. So I'm going to get a little orange paint and paint that right down here. Now, you're going to be using this sheet as a reference You're going to be using this practice sheet as a reference when we're making our final artwork. So you need to make sure that you understand all these ideas. So the opposite of blue is orange. And now let's do our last primary. We're at yellow. If we want to find the opposite of yellow, we find yellow on the color wheel and we go all the way down to find its opposite, which is violet. Okay, so opposites on the color wheel directly across from each other on the color wheel. I'm going to go ahead and add my yellow. Wash off my brush. And then my violet. So you can notice how these colors look very, very vibrant and bold next to each other. Complements always look very bold next to each other. So complements, red and green are complements or opposites. Blue and orange are complements or opposites. And yellow and violet are complements or opposites. And we can use the color wheel to find that out by finding the color and then just going straight across to find its opposite. So if we want to know the opposite of green, go straight across and we find red. If we want the opposite of orange, straight across and we find blue. So that's how to use the color wheel to help you find complementary colors or opposites. Now, in this section, we have warm colors and cool colors, and this is pretty simple. Warm colors are colors that are all next to each other on the color wheel. And these colors, I like to remember it by remembering that warm colors are the color of fire. So fire is hot or warm, and those are the colors that make us think of heat or warmth. So we have the color red. You can just paint these into your squares. Red. We have the color yellow right here. And the color orange. So these are the colors of fire or warm colors, colors that make you think or feel warmth. When we look at a painting, warm colors tend to look like they're kind of popping out at you. They kind of look like they're popping out at you. All right, so you'll notice that the warm colors are all next to each other on the color wheel. Red, orange, and yellow, all next to each other. Now the cool colors are also all next to each other on the color wheel, just like this. So cool colors, green, blue, and sometimes violet. Violet can feel like a warm color or it can feel like a cool color depending on what other colors are with it. But this right here are cool colors, these colors right here. Now, these colors to me, I like to remember these by remembering that the cool colors are the colors of water or the ocean. So these are the colors I think of when I think of the ocean. I think of colors like blues and greens when I think of the ocean. And I think of how cool the water of the ocean always feels on my skin. So that's how I think about or remember which colors are cool and which colors are warm. By remembering that the warm colors are the colors that make me think of fire, and the cool colors are the colors that make me think of water. Now, violet, in this case, we're going to be putting violet in the cool color category, but depending on what shade of violet you're using and what other colors are going alongside of it, violet can sometimes feel like a warm color. But we're using a cool violet here for this area. All right, so we have warm colors and cool colors. And our last colors that we're going to talk about in this activity are monochromatic colors. Now, monochromatic colors, that's kind of a tricky term because it's really only one color and the tints and shades of that color. So a tint is any color plus white. And a shade is any color plus black. Now I'm going to use red for my example because it does a really good job. And I'm just going to paint some regular plain red in my third square. You can notice I'm just painting my regular red in my third square, just like that. Okay? Now, in order to mix a tint of red, I'm going to get some white paint. It's hard for you to see that, but I got it down at the bottom there. Some white paint, and I'm just going to put it right here on the side of my watercolor. Now, if you're working with a watercolor strip, we don't have any white paint on our watercolor strip, but you can always just add plain water to the color to lighten it up as well. So if that's not really working, if you don't have white, I'm actually going to move that over because I got some green in there. Okay. If you don't have white paint, then you can just add plain water to get a really good tint, a light color when we're working with watercolor paint. Okay, so I've got some white paint right there, and I'm just going to get a little dot of red. See my red paint right here? Just got a little dot of that on my paintbrush, and I'm going to mix that together with my white. And you'll notice it kind of just looks like a pink color. Looks like I just have some pink there because pink is a tint of red. So I'm just going to paint that. My tints are my color mixed with white. You can see how much lighter that is than my original red color. See that? All right. Now, I'm going to do that again, but this time I'm going to add some more white. I don't know. It's hard for you to see. There we go. So I'm going to get a little more white right here. I don't need a ton, but I'm going to get a little bit more just right here. There we go. And I'm just going to pick up a little bit of this pink color and add that to my white. And now I have a really light pink color, really light. And I can bring it over here and paint it in. So we can get lighter and lighter values of the same color. So all of these have red in them, but the tints have different amounts of white in them. So we have a really light red, a darker red. This is just pure red with no white or black added. And then I'm going to do the same thing and make what we call a shade. A shade is a color plus black. So I'm going to mix a little bit of red. I'm going to just put it right here on my palette. You can also mix this on a paper plate if you have a paper plate at home, or really just right on the side of your paper if you want to, or even just right in your square. All right, so I have some red there, and I'm going to add a little bit of black to it. It's my black paint. You do have black paint on your watercolor strip, so you can definitely make shades with your watercolor strip. And I'm just going to add a little bit of black right there to my red. I've just added a little bit of black there. It's off my brush a little. Okay, so I've added a little black to my red, and I'm going to just paint it right here. And that is a darker color than my regular red. It's a little darker. Kind of made a mess out of my red there. Here we go. Okay. So just finish painting that in. And let's say you wanted it to be even darker than that. You could make it even darker by adding a little bit more black. You can make an even darker shade. And I could even put that over here. There's not a square for it, but that doesn't matter. This is just a practice sheet anyway. So you can see this is red plus a little bit of black. So that's a sort of a not too dark of a shade. And this red plus even more black, which is even darker of a shade. So we have a light tint, kind of a medium tint, our regular plain red, a lighter shade, and a darker shade, which is the color plus black. Now, that's a lot. We spent a lot of time doing this today, but this tool is going to actually be really important for you when we start to create our painting, because we're going to be referring back to this next week when we make our paintings. We're going to be looking back at this sheet and making some decisions by looking at the relationship between colors on our color wheel, looking at how we can make a color lighter or darker by adding different things here. We might want to use cool colors or warm colors or just secondary colors or just primary colors or one set of complements. So this sheet is going to be important for you when we go to create our artwork. Now I want to spend about 5 minutes. This will only take me about 5 minutes to show you what to do to get this started. This week, your assignment is to, between now and the next time we meet, to do a drawing that uses lines, just straight lines. So you might want to use a ruler, and circles. Now, these are called concentric circles, circles that are inside of each other. Here's a little circle with a bigger circle and a bigger circle and a bigger circle. We have different sized circles placed all over our paper. Some of them overlap. Some of them kind of stop when they get to this one so that it looks like they're going behind. Some of them look like they're on top of others. So I'm going to quickly show you how to do that. So you're going to need just a blank white sheet of paper, and you're going to need some circles. So let me show you what I've collected just from around my office. And you can probably find a lot of circles around your house that you could use that are different sizes. For example, this is a roll of tape. So this roll of tape will give me sort of a bigger circle around the outside if I trace the outside, and a really tiny circle if I trace the inside. So if you could find a roll of tape at home, you could get some good circles out of that. This is a little Rubbermaid container, just a little food storage container. If I turn it upside down, I can get a big circle around the outside. If I put it this way, the bottom is a smaller circle, so I could trace it that way. This is a little jar, just like a little jam or jelly jar. You could use the lid of a jar, but you could also use the jar itself. This side, if I trace the top of it, I'll get a larger circle. And if I trace the bottom, I'll get a smaller circle. This is masking tape. Masking tape is usually on a wide roll, so I could use this to create a big circle on the outside and a slightly smaller, still big circle on the inside. So these are just some things I gathered. You could use a cup or a plate or anything that you can find that will give you a circle to trace, and try to find some different sizes. This is the lid to this container. It also might give me some other circles. This kind of has a small circle in the center I could trace. So let me show you quickly how we do this. So we are going to just find a spot, any spot on our paper, it doesn't matter where, any spot on our paper where we want to put our circles. So I'm going to start with one here, kind of on the left-hand side. And I'm just going to trace around the outside here of my circle, just like that. And if I want one circle inside of another circle, like I have here, I might also trace the inside without moving it. It's still where it was. I'm going to trace the inside of this circle too, just like that. Now, if I want to put another circle inside of that, those are the lines I've already drawn. I could get my smaller roll of tape and trace around, make sure to hold it in place, just like that. And maybe I want even a smaller circle, so I did that. Okay, so really all I traced was the inside and outside of this roll of tape and the inside and outside of this one. So these are just things I had around the house, but anything you have that's a circle will work wonderfully. So if you have a food container that has a larger circular lid, that might work great too. Okay, now I want to draw another circle. I'm going to use this, and this one kind of has a bump, but I'm not going to use this part. I'm going to make it look like this goes underneath this one. So I'm going to position it so that this is over the top, and I'm just going to start right at this line, go all the way around to this line. You can see that. So I didn't draw that part of the circle, and now it looks like this one is going behind that one. I can also draw them on top of each other. So, for example, maybe I want to draw a circle that goes over the top of my other circles. Now the goal is just to completely fill up your paper with circles. And if you kind of mess up on tracing one, I sort of messed up on that one a little bit, I can come in and erase. I'm using a pencil. So use a pencil when you do this. And I have another roll of tape here that's a little different in size. I'm going to go over here with this one. Just like this. And I'm just going to keep going all the way around. Maybe I use the jar this time to get a different size circle, like that. And then maybe I'll use the tiny circle inside of this little roll of tape, like that. All right, and so I'm just going to keep adding circles until I'm happy with what I have. I'm going to put one right here, just like that. And maybe another large one on top, right here, like that. So I can just keep adding circles. And once I'm happy with the design that I have with my circles, once I'm happy with this, okay, kind of like that, then I want to add a few lines. So you want to fill it up with as many different kinds of different sizes, not kinds, different sizes of circles. I kind of messed up on the inside of that, but that's okay. All I have to do is come back and try again. There it is. Once you fill up your paper with those, then we want to make some lines. Now I'm going to use my ruler, and I want to make some diagonal lines. I'm not making any straight up and down or any straight side to side lines. All my lines are going to be diagonal. Now they can go all the way from one edge of the paper to the other, or they could just be just inside the circle. However you want your lines to go is just fine. What we're really doing is just dividing our paper into some different shapes. So I drew one straight across just like that. And I actually don't want it to go through that circle, so I'm going to erase it. It's always just fine to erase to fix it. So I just had one going from here to that circle. And then I'm going to go diagonally in this direction. Maybe like this. So you can kind of turn your paper, get it to where you want it to be, like that. Okay, that's two diagonal lines. I might want to do one that's kind of this way. Still diagonal. It's more up and down, but still diagonal. And you want to do at least 3 diagonal lines. Now you can do more than 3. I think I'm going to do one more right here. So this is my 4th diagonal line. But that might be it. That might be it for me. I could always do another one if I wanted to. Maybe right here. There's not a limit on how many you can do, but you need to do at least 3. There we go. That's it, I think. I like the way that that looks. So divide it into some diagonal lines. I've got 2 different examples here. They look similar, but fill up your paper with circles and lines, as many different sizes of circles as you can find for next week. So we're going to talk next week about how to take the colors that we learned about today and add them to our artwork so that our artwork has a certain feel to it. So we might want to to get a certain feeling by using warm colors or cool colors. We might want to have a certain feeling by using complementary colors or using monochromatic colors. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more next week, how you can choose the types of colors that you want to use in your artwork to get the effect that you want. So next week, we will go over how to start painting your abstract circle and diagonal line design. I hope that you've had a good time today. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead in just a moment and stop the recording. If you have questions, I'll stay around to answer those. And otherwise, I hope that you guys have enjoyed learning a little bit about color. It's a lot to learn and a lot to remember, but a practice sheet like this one becomes a great tool, a great reference for you as an artist when you're making choices about the colors that you want to use in your artwork. So we're going to be using this tool for sure over the next few weeks. I look forward to seeing you again on December the 15th. That is our final session for the October, November, December Afternoon Art Club quarter. We will be continuing Afternoon Art Club in the new year, and I'll be giving you some more information about that next time. So I'm going to say goodbye and stop the recording. If you have questions, please hang around after to ask them. If you have questions and you're watching this on the recording, then please do send me an email. I'm more than happy to answer your questions. Have a great afternoon. Bye.